Well, welcome everybody. It's good to be in Montevideo. It's my first time in Uruguay, so I thought it was really exciting to be invited. Luckily enough, I had some days on Sunday to go to the, do I pronounce it right, Puente del Este. Do I say that all right? You had a hand? Okay. And yesterday I had some stroll to the city, so I have some impression of the country and the city, which is very nice. So I was very pleased to experience that. I'm also very pleased to be here and talk about my work, because I like that maybe even better. So today I'm going to talk about the art of excellence. And it's a little bit a presumptuous title, a little bit ambitious title, but I like to investigate with you in the following 45 minutes what we need to do to add value as a professional. So that's the seekers for excellence, is like, how can we be professionals that add value and are appreciated by it. So as testers, we always have to fight up against people that say, like, what's the use of testing? Well, let's see what's needed to be a valuable IT professional in the near future. And so we were talking about trends, and there's a reason why I'll be talking about it. And while preparing this talk, I came upon a video which I think summarizes it very well. So let's look at that video.
Once upon a time, business as usual was often good enough. No more. Where we are going, good enough is dead. In a world where everything is connected, where everything is equally excellent, where performance is reaching perfection, there's only one space left to innovate in: you. Right now, you are a central point in the raging tornado of change fueled by digitization, mobilization, augmentation, disintermediation, automation. Well, the list goes on. Science fiction is becoming science fact. So what's your response? How will you discover new opportunities in one of the most transformational times in human history? Are you driving change, or are you being driven by it?
I think that's the key question. Are you driving the change, or are you being driven by it? And in the movie you can see that it's saying there's a lot of trends going and coming our way. We as customers expect more from the businesses and the services that we do, and it's exceptional times because things are changing rapidly. And organizations have to change rapidly. So that's what we were talking about. So the roadmap will be that we will look at some of the disruptive changes and see how that influence the way we do our software development and how the roles that we have are changing. And I'll be stating that organizations need to change and to adapt, and they need help for that. And who can help them better than we? Because like I said in the video, when everything is automated, where's the growth? It's in the professionals that do the value-added stuff. But we need to embrace the change in order to become visionaries, explorer, and/or experts, and then we can add value. And that's the roadmap that we're going to take today. Personally, I'm a great fan of Peter Gabriel, former lead singer of Genesis. And in 2000, he did a Millennium show with the song Upside Down, Downside Up. And I really like this quote, which is in the song, because he says, the only constant that I'm sure of is this accelerating rate of change. So basically he's saying the situation is not a constant. No, it's changing. The change is not a constant. No, because the change becomes faster, faster, and faster. So the only constant is the accelerating rate of change. And I think we all notice that new trends follow up each other in a shorter moment every day, every year, and the pace is going up very steep. So we have to do something as a professional, as an organization. And when Peter Gabriel would have been an IT professional, he'd probably be making songs with these kind of titles, Agile, Scrum, Continuous Integration, Deployment, all the hype words, blockchain, microservices, don't forget about that one, augmented reality, DevOps, alpha beta testing. But luckily enough, he is a pop singer, so he sings other songs and leaves the talking to me. So let's talk about what's happening in the world and how we can embrace the change as a company. You might know this life cycle. This is the life cycle that an average company is going through once it's founded until it dies. And you can see there's on the left side, so the creation part, you have a small startup organization that's really flexible, probably is built around a technical product, if we're talking IT. The director might have been building on the product itself. There's a small client base. So we have direct contact with the customers, and then we have a success, and then the company is growing. And over time, it's growing, and there's a very important point up there where the graph is splitting, because once the organization has been grown to a certain stage, the world has changed. And the organization has to decide whether it just continues doing what it always did, and it will get into a decline, and they can last for years and make profitable money, but nothing new will come out of the product, or they reinvent themselves and do something new, reach for new audiences, make new services, change the way they do their business. And that's the tricky point where a lot of organizations are going, because the rapid change is increasing every time. So we cannot rely that that moment is far away in the future. In order to summarize that a little bit more with pictures, the wooden thing is the prototype of the computer mouse of 1960. So that's the first computer mouse. And I took that picture because if you make the prototype and your customer say, I want something else, it's very easy to adapt the prototype. So that's really the startup organization that's technical able, in control, to fast change its own products. No wonder that a lot of big organizations are looking with envy at the startup organizations, and a lot of talk have been going about what do you do as a startup, a technical startup. And when the organization is growing, you need to have systems to, the Excel sheet where your customer database no longer succeeds. So you need to have systems, and if you're growing further, you might have different departments, so you come up with processes and agreements, how you deal things between departments, and the organization becomes more and more rigid. So basically, when the time is passing, you create more legacy in the system, in the organization, and you create inertia, the rigidness, the difficulties to change. And in the later stage, say stage number 4, organizations are adopting bigger systems like SAP, ERP systems, build things on top of them, and that's where the legacy really starts. And I think the 5th stage is where organizations say, like, we need to sanitize our systems, we need to sanitize our architecture, because we want to be able to be more flexible and adapt our systems more quickly than we do. And I think we all have been in organizations, and we all know that legacy system, the difficulties that we're dealing with, because, well, we created our own legacy, and we made it very hard to adapt as an organization. So that's important if you want to reinvent yourself. Where are you on this graph? And how much legacy did you create? I think we often talk about legacy, about systems, but legacy is a multi-dimensional problem, I guess. So you're talking about people, process, organization, culture, and maybe propositions as well. Proposition, I've been told that YouTube used to be a dating site. So in the early days, they added something, so you could add a video to update your profile, make you more attractive. And then they discovered that actually the videos were more in demand than the dating part, and they shift the product. That's a typical startup behavior. They say, we're going to do something else. A proposition won't be dating, it will be video, and we all know what happened with YouTube. So a lot of dimensions in which we might have legacy, and we're stuck with that, but it's a problem because the changes are increasingly in rate, and we have to deal with that. The outside world is changing rapidly, and we need to be adaptive as an organization. And it's not only something which is nice to do, it's a life-saving strategy. It's really important for organizations to become more and more adaptive. If you look at the Standard & Poor's index, which is the stock market in America, they found out that over the last 50 years, the average life cycle, the lifespan of a company is reduced by 1/3. So it used to be 45 years, 50 years ago, and now it's 15 years. That's the time that it takes to run through that cycle. So if you're not able to adapt yourself and find out new demands and play the game right, change the way you do your business and the IT systems alongside with it, you might cease to exist. So it's really important to be adaptive. So the best thing you can do is think very carefully about what might be the next thing coming my way and anticipate to that. But there's a problem because a lot of the changes that we're dealing with are disruptive. So that means we cannot really predict what the impact of that will be. So it might be nice to talk a little bit about disruptive changes. I think it's kind of a hype word now. To put it in a historical context, I looked it up in 2012. I wrote an article about discontinuity, it's a difficult word, in maturity, where I state, like, we often presume that the next level of maturity, for instance, or test maturity, or TPI kind of TMMM stuff, is already inside our current situation. And we improve, and it's an evolution. We grow from that. And in the 2012 article, I said it might be discontinuous, because while we're improving, there might be new tools that are easier, new concept, new companies that do it in a better way, and they're bypassing us, and suddenly we look behind, like, where does this come from? That's much more effective than the path we're having. And in 2012, I was using the word discontinuity rather than disruptive, so I didn't know that word yet, and I learned that later on. But a lot of changes are disruptive. And what's a disruptive change? Basically, it's like I said. But maybe a good example could be the Dutch defense system. So as you know, I'm from the Netherlands, and it's a small country, and we have two very important cities. That's Amsterdam, that's our capital, and The Hague, that's where the governance is seated. And in 200 years ago or something, we expected that most of the enemies would come over land. So we thought, how can we protect our cities? And you know, the Netherlands, well, we're a country of dikes and water. So we came up with a very clever defense system. And you can see some blue lines. That's water. But normally that's not there. So we thought, when the enemy approaches, we just make a system of dikes and valves. And when the enemy approaches, we just flood part of the country. Not the whole country, just a small part of that. And it's like knee-deep water. And it worked very great. Here you can see some old pictures of enemy troops that got stuck in the mud with the horses, with the cannons, etc. So we were building that, and we thought we can improve that better. We can get to a higher maturity. So you see the red dots, and those are cities and fortified fortifications that we put along the line, so we could really see the enemy approaching, get stuck in the mud, and we could shoot at them. And then the disruptive change came, because what do you think what happened? We found the airplane. And suddenly, we were trying to improve our defense line, and a disruptive change was that you could just fly over the mud and drop your troops, your cannons, whatever, on the city. And we no longer use this anymore, of course. So that's a very simple disruptive change that I'd like to share with you. But other things could be the self-driving car, for instance. I think if you're a car manufacturer, you used to be counting on that you sell a lot of cars to individual consumers. Because we all like to have our own car. So it's a car. It used to be an engine thing, a mechanical thing, and everybody wanted to have a cool car. And if you look at the self-driving cars, I think the business is completely changing, because my future image is that with the Internet of Things, everything connected, my alarm goes, and I take my shower and my breakfast, and I walk outside, and I have a prescription to transportation service, and there's a self-driving car standing in front of my house, and I get in, and it says, "Good morning, Derk-Jan. We noticed that you wanted to go to Amsterdam. We're right as prefect. Just sit down, relax, read your newspaper. We'll bring you to your destination." So for car manufacturer, that is a big change, because he will be selling less cars because we're sharing cars. So the business model, if I design a car and I sell them very often to many people, will be changing. And rather than it being an engine, it will be a service. So it's not selling car, it's selling transportation services. And it will be part of an IoT network, something completely integrated. So the car mechanic is maybe still needed, but we need IT experts. So the business model is completely gone, I think. So I like that as a form of disruptive change. Another, I think, is 3D printing. So I failed to look up, do you have IKEA here? Yeah, it's everywhere. So you know it, right? We go there, buy a box, assemble the furniture at home, and we have that long queues at the public holidays where everybody's going to buy its furniture, etc. No more, because we just download the model from the internet, send it to a local store or a 3D printer and make some adaptations, choose the color or whatever, and it gets delivered at our house. And 3D printing can be done with houses, a lot of medical stuff, of course. But if I was IKEA, I would change my business model. I'm not sure how, because I'm not IKEA, but it would be different. And the last thing that you could talk about is for ages, of course. We don't have the time. It's artificial intelligence and robotica. The funny thing is, like, it's been around for years, and people have been working on it for years. But the last 2 years, I see it coming on as a topic on conferences big time. So now this year, all the conferences are talking about artificial intelligence. And it's a challenge, because it's a game changer. And it can be robots. So I had the medical robot here. But it could also be robots without arms and something. So like the chatbots. Because we want to automate everything. We want to have automated decisions. So we don't need people to make judgments anymore. The systems are doing that. But the systems are learning themselves. So they change their behavior over time because they become more smart. For a testing point of view, that's a really interesting thing. Is how are you going to test a system that by default will not respond the same way if you try to replay the bug? I'm not the expert in artificial intelligence, but we have some work to do. But it will change the world big time. But the problem is, of course, how the implications will be. It's very hard. It's very hard to predict the impact of a disruptive change. But what does that mean for on-site IT development and on-site IT delivery? That's a good question, isn't it? I think we live in funny times, very challenging times, but also in very nice times. And there's something unique going on, because I've been having discussions about the right methodologies, etc. And there was a lot of dispute in IT world on how we should do our IT. And I think now we're living in an age where everybody kind of has the same idea of what they want. So that's the exit to utopia. We agree on the exit. And some organizations are already there. Some organizations are nearly there, trying to get there very fast. For some organizations, it's a longer travel. And some organizations might never get there because their life cycle is only 15 years and it takes longer time to develop themselves. But I think everybody wants to be an adaptive organization that learns, is able to learn from its mistakes and from the way they're being used. They like to collaborate between disciplines. They like to collaborate with chain partners. They want to integrate their work very frequently. They want to integrate with other services, and they want to deliver value solutions. And if I summarize these things, I'm very much thinking about continuous integration, deployment kind of practices, DevOps practices, and I think a lot of organizations are heading that way. Don't you think? So that's very good. We don't have discussions about should we do continuous integration or should we do DevOps. A lot of people agree that that's the way we're going. But how we go there and how we get there and what it exactly will look like for each organization will, of course, be different. But I'll try to make it a little bit more simple. So I made some Lego stuff. That's the essence of a lot of things. And I think these are the building blocks of what organizations are working with right now. So the blue block is the IT team. Make it an agile team, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. That's able to build fast solutions. So they're good IT professionals, good programmers. And on top of that, I have some testing, because everything that we deliver as an IT department, of course, is being tested. And the red block on top of it is, I think, the tests that are done in the sprint. And then we have the integration testing, which is a struggle for a lot of organizations, like where do we do the integration testing, how do we combine things. It's the red block behind the testing. And then once we have tested solutions that are potentially shippable, we want to ship them, of course, so that's the yellow brick, which is about how do we get the stuff into production? How do we migrate into the next environment, and is the next environment production? So that's where the continuous integration and deployment is sitting. And we want to use it, we want to operate it. So we have the DevOps to involve them in the whole process to ensure that the release towards production operation goes very smooth. And that's, I think, the outlet channel of the IT department. But in the supply line, we need to have working items that we want to work on. So that's the business, because the business needs to tell to us, this is what we need, and this is what we need first. It needs to make a translation from company vision, company goals, new products, new product lines, new features that they think will make a difference, so they can adopt the business and break it down into pieces so we can build it. And if we're talking about getting into the portfolio line, getting into the business, I think we're already scaling our agile, so I made that 2 blocks. And the light blue blocks is a very one, because putting IT into production is one thing, using it as an organization is another thing. So the ops block is all about organizational readiness. And I think if you look at these building blocks, a lot of the things that are going on in your organization, a lot of bigger changes that are being tried or aimed for by your organization can be mapped on one of these building blocks. Because this is what we're all working at, trying to be adaptive, getting a translation from business vision, which might change because the world is changing rapidly, into work items that we develop with quality and get into production quickly so we can operate them, learn from it, and gain value from it. But it's difficult. So I showed you the legacy picture, and there are some challenges that I see in my organizations that I work for. And you can map them. It's roughly done. It's no rocket science. So if you look at the people, there are a lot of people that lack skills. Think about the car operator that suddenly has to build an IoT network or something, has to learn some new skills. But a lot of organizations that I see that adopt Scrum and Agile have a Scrum Master, have a product owner, but they need to learn their job as well. If you're talking about systems, we talk about the architecture, of course. The legacy sits in the architecture very much. And in the processes, how much automations do we have? How easy is our process to translate portfolio items into work items? And then I see a lot of organizations that try to do good work, but are disrupted by ad hoc issues all the time because their quality is too poor. So they cannot really be predictive as an agile team. They cannot really concentrate at work because there's always something going on which is distracting them. So there's too much on the planning. I've been in organizations where the business says, like, for the next year, this is what we're going to do, because it's really important. And I heard a sigh in the audience, like, it's the IT audience, like, but we're already struggling with this, and we needed to do this, and we were delaying with that, and we can't cope with it all. And I spoke, it's hard to get good people in the Netherlands, but I spoke with some people here. It's hard to get good people everywhere, I guess, right now. So getting an extra team is not always an option. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And if we need to prioritize, we need to know what the teams are working on. And one of the challenges if you're working with many teams is not telling them what to do, but it's knowing what's been done. So that's the governance part. In bigger organizations, that's really a problem. And then with the culture, stakeholder involvement. I heard a lot of people complain that we want to give a demo, but they don't show up, that kind of thing. Within bigger agile teams, the budgeting is very often quite traditional, what I see. So we have teams and they're just a cost post, but who's paying for the agile teams and what do people expect from that? So it's really difficult, and how do you translate that back for, are we working on project X and should I put that somewhere on a budget sheet or something? I see very ugly stuff, but a lot of organizations are trying to make that better. The product definition, like the YouTube version, I thought, and the culture thing. I've been coaching bank offices recently where people were actually trained to do what they were told. So the good thing was, I came in as an agile coach and said, we're going to do agile. And they say, okay, no resistance at all. But there was a fake resistance because they were just trained to say, okay, if you want that, so we'll do that. And while making the agile adoption, we say you have to think for yourself, you have to organize for yourself. But they didn't like that, because they like to be not thinking, but doing what they were told. It's much easier. So that's a real transitional, cultural transition. And in the organizational thing, like how is your organization structured? Are you ready to have fast deployments? Can you cope with that? And can you restructure your organization from system-oriented teams to more storylines or value streams kind of thing? So there's a lot of challenges that I think that organizations that I encounter and work with are all struggling with this. And we need to embrace the change. We need to overcome these challenges in order to become the adaptive organization that is able to reinvent itself once in a while when the world has changed again. And what does that mean for us as IT professionals? So in 2012, I wrote a book with a fellow group of Dutch testers, and this was the anniversary book for the Dutch Test Association. And it's a Dutch book, so it's not available in Spanish. Sorry for that. So I'll give you a very brief summary, but it was called Set Your Course. There's future and trends in software testing. And we looked at what's happening in the world, what's happening in business, what's happening in IT, and what does that mean for testing, and what does that mean for you as a software tester. And the reason why we did that was because we thought that a lot of software testers that were somehow in their comfort zone, and they were not aware that there's so many changes around there. So we want to raise a finger and say, like, beware, there's change ahead, and you should prepare for that. Otherwise, you might lose your job, suddenly to find out that you don't have the skills, and you're not set for what's needed by the organizations. I spoke with a guy who said, my organization went agile, was a software tester, and I feel really uncomfortable because I have the feeling that if I have to apply for my job again, they won't hire me. That's not a very nice feeling, right? So I'm tolerated in my office because I already have the contract, but they wouldn't hire me, and I know that. So the most important page of the book, that's my brief summary, is this page, where we made some kind of transition table, where we say there are old roles and there are new roles. And this is no science, and it is far from complete, where we say, like, you got the old role, like the test engineer, the tester, the test coordinator, the test manager, and the test consultant. And what is most likely that you end up doing in the near future. This is 2012, right? And the signal strength science, because mobile was really hot in 2012, indicates the probability or how easy it is to get new roles. And we thought, well, we need something like a test facilitator that enables agile teams to test, and all the environments are ready and the test data is arranged, so some people really organize it. And if we go bigger in organizations, we need acceptance management. I still believe we need acceptance management. We don't need to do tests, but we need to accompany the projects to integration, end-to-end testing, and to an acceptance, so we know we can go live with the bigger stuff. Then we say we might need a cultural host, because outsourcing was really hot in the Netherlands in 2012. And we need to have a super tester, somebody who can find every bug. We need auditors for compliance reasons, and then maybe some people become a business consultant or a programmer. This is not a complete list, but it was just some way to shake people up and say, like, maybe your world will change as well, and you find yourself in a new job, in a new role, rather than your old role. And that was 2012, so last year we had a 5-year anniversary of the book. So at the Dutch TestNet Association conference, we had a workshop where we asked people, like, how did your work change over the last 5 years? We had a group of testers, and we did the Starfish retrospective thing. You might know that, where you ask people to put post-its on a star, which says, like, what did you do more, what did you do less, what did you continue doing, what did you stop doing, and what did you start doing. And this is what I came up with. And we don't have the time to go all through the list. I'll be giving a workshop tomorrow, so some people might be there as well. We have a little bit more time to go into detail. But what you can see is that a lot of people say, we started doing things more, and we started doing new things, and it's quite a long list. The proof that over the last 5 years, the work for those testers actually changed quite a bit. And they stopped doing some stuff, and there were some things that they say, we're still doing that, and we think that's important. And the hardcore testing is on there. And we showed you the transition matrix with some roles, and you can map the roles on the thing. So the end-to-end testing relies a lot of coordination, so we have the test facilitator. We need a global test strategy, so there's the acceptance manager. People started finally doing some audits as well for compliancy reasons. So some people started doing auditing, or we predicted that. We said there's a super tester. Well, the hardcore tester is typically the domain of the super tester. And some people say we stopped thinking that testers can only test, so they became programmers. Whether that's test automation or building code, doesn't really matter. And then the roles that we predicted, the business consultant, nobody said we're doing business consultancy, which surprised me. But this was a test conference, so I think everybody who did business consultancy is not at the test conference, right? And the cultural host, well, that just didn't go the way we predicted it. So it can happen if you predict the future. But this picture shows that the world of testing, the role of the tester, content-wise has changed quite a bit. And I can imagine that a lot of testers are confused by that, bewildered, whatever, perplexed. And I think like, the world is changing, I have different demands, I need to do more diverse things, but where should I go? What are the skills that I need to adapt in order to be in a job in the next 5, 10 years and be of added value? And we know what the organizations want, right? We've been there. But how do we get there? How do organizations get there? And I think the value is, if we want to deliver value as software testers, is helping the organizations to get there. And that's a mission that we have, whether we're a software tester or a business analyst, but we're the software testers now. So we should do everything we can in order to help organizations to get there. Because they know there's an urgency to adapt the way they work. And they know they cannot buy the solutions from the book. I've been working with the Dutch bank that I talked to, where we implemented Agile in a sales environment. Nobody had done that before, so there were no examples in the Netherlands. So you have to try and learn, fail, stand up again and try again. It's a long process. So it's hard, it will take time, it will be frustrating. And for many organizations that means that the shop has to remain open, right? While we're rebuilding, business goes on as continuously. I was once working for an organization that had a lot of legacy code, and they couldn't really change it anymore, so they said, well, what we're going to do, we're going to take 2 teams, and we're going to set them apart, and for a half year, they're going to work on rebuilding the system. And we tell the business, we'll freeze the code. You cannot make any adaptations anymore, because that will be confusing. So hold them up until we're done with the code. But it didn't work, of course, because they got delayed, and it was more complex, and the business was very eager to have new features. But yeah, the shop has to remain open, and it's hard to do that. And there's a lot of legacy that we have to get rid of. But it's good to remember that if we are bewildered and thinking our roles are changing due to the changes in the organizations, our managers are just as afraid and scared and bewildered as we are. Because they feel the urgency and they get the instructions, but they don't know what to do. So they rely on us as IT professionals, so we can really help them. And I think that's a really important thing. And how can we add value? I think there are 3 roles that we can use in order to add value. And we can be a visionary, we can be an explorer, or we can be an expert. So I'll run through these 3 roles. And I'll start off with the visionary. I think the visionary is the one that points out and addresses issues or important topics to the organization. And it can be done at various levels. So the visionary points the way so that new opportunities are seized, so that new technologies might be adopted, or that improvements are put on the agenda. And it can be high over the agenda, the management agenda, but it could be the agenda of your team as well. Because there are different layers. And I gave you some examples. If you want to be a visionary on a commercial level, I was working for roadside aid, so if your car breaks down organization, and they had a little bit an old-fashioned image, and they had a magazine. And in the magazine, they had pictures of advertisements of chair elevators. So the chair that you sit in, if you're old and you cannot walk the stairs, and you go up. And they wanted to address newer crowds. They want to get rid of their old-fashioned image. So now they have no longer those adverts in the magazine. So I think it's a visionary thing to make that link, make that observation, and say, like, if we want to address new target audience, we should look at what we're communicating and how we are communicating, and we should make changes in that. How you do that operationally is a different thing, but I think it's a visionary thing to put it on the agenda. If you have systems that are very old technique, and you notice that the disruptive changes, that competitors use new technology, which makes it much more easy to adapt the systems or build new services or offer services to customers, it might be a good thing to benchmark that as a visionary and say, like, if we adopt new technology, we'll be far off and much more flexible, so I want to raise that on the agenda. Or efficiency thing, if you do a lot of things manually, your testing or your deployment, it might be the benchmarking thing. So there are other organizations that do something called continuous integration and deployment, and they have a hands-off pipeline. They don't have to do anything. They just press the button, and 5 minutes later, the software is in production. What would happen if we would adapt that? Is that worthwhile trying? Or tests. I've been in organizations where the product manager was shocked I heard we shipped something to the customer and we didn't do all the tests. So loads at the IT department. Because we have to do the test manually and it takes like 3 weeks and we didn't get 3 weeks from you. So we did the most important tests. And the business wasn't aware of that, so they had a sleepless night over it. So the visionary might be, if we automate some tests, we can avoid that in the future. So basically the visionary puts things on the agenda, shows the way, the possible way where we can go and triggers discussion. 2 weeks ago I was at a customer, this is a colleague of mine, or a client actually, and he showed that on the hallway he was making a billboard with a holistic transformation approach. And he was telling me very enthusiastic, you can see him smile, like this is where I think the organization should be going and how we're going to do our business. And I asked him, are you asked by the management team to do this? He said, no, we're just trying, thinking about it in philosophy. And then we'll sell the story in the organization and we'll see what happens. So I thought, go stand there, point out, this is a post picture. I said, but because I want to have the picture in this presentation because I think you're acting like a visionary. You have a vision, you have a goal for you, foresee something, and you're trying to tell the organization where you think they should go. And you trigger discussions and put them on the agenda. So he posed for me and I could show it to you. A picture that I very often use when I'm talking about continuous integration and deployment is this picture, because I think continuous integration and deployment is very often approached from a technical point of view, a tool point of view. And these are 8 requisites that I think have to be in place if you want to have successful continuous integration. And I'm not an expert in all the items, but I can use this picture and say, like, if you believe these are the 8 requisites, should we talk about, just pick one and say, like, how is your architecture or how is your test automation going on, and have a discussion about that. By doing that, I raise the topic so we can do more on that. I did some workshops on this, and I asked people, like, how good are you? So it's 3 workshops, I think 80 people together or something, or 50, I'm not really sure. And you see that there's a big deviation in how good we are in having those requisites in place. So there's work to be done. Showing this picture in your organization and talking about, like, should we work on team collaboration is a visionary way. And once we put things on the agenda, whatever level, I think we need the explorer to make a translation, like how can we do our test automation? If we want to have an automated pipeline, if we want to have generated tests, how can we do that? So the explorer is the one that picks the idea, starts making experiments to learn how it can be done in the organization. And he's basically trying to put the items in the high score thing, like we got this thing in place. And I think the explorer typically needs to retrospect and analyze, be creative, look around himself, observe things, be persuasive. So he needs to tell the organization, is it okay if I spend some time to find out if it works with this tool, or if this experiment or this approach is benefiting to us as development team? Or maybe he should persuade his team members, is it okay if during the following sprint I'm not contributing to business value items, but I'm going to do some spike kind of thing. So he needs to be able to define experiments and share his conclusions with the organizations, because the next stage is that once we have a topic from a visionary point of view, we do some experiments and learn how we can do it, we go share that and say, like, we found a better way to do this, use this tool in the organization, and we'll be better off as an organization. And that's where we need the experts, of course, because the expert knows how to utilize the tools they have in order to create those quality solutions in an effective way. So those are the people that are proud of their work, they want to improve their work, they're true experts, and they speak like, I know how to implement automated tests, I know how to perform code analysis, whatever your expertise is, but you're proud on what you know, and you stand out for that and say, like, I'm the best in doing that. So those are the visionary, the explorer, and the expert. And I hope when I was talking to that, oh, I was pressing the button already, when I was talking about it, you thought, yeah, I want to be the explorer, or I want to be the visionary. Somebody said, I want to be one of those roles. I dig myself doing that. Yeah? I hope so. Maybe you can be more than one, right? You can be all 3 of them simultaneously, but you might have a preference. But whatever you do, you need to know what trends you want to go for and put on the agenda. You need to define what experiments you're going to conduct, or you need to know what skills you're going to learn. So you have to embrace the change. Yeah, there's something going automatically now, which I didn't plan. So I think it's doing some rehearsal stuff. But never mind. So you need to know where you are and where you want to go. And that's your personal roadmap. And I find that very strange, but it's very difficult for a lot of people. I was coaching a team where we said, like, let's make simple improvement plans as a team in the retrospective. I'm going to ask you, like, one small thing. What are you going to do in the following sprint to become a better professional? And a lot of those team members didn't speak out. So either they were scared of admitting that they were not perfect in something, and I thought, I'm not going to say that I'm lousy in this and I want to learn something, because then people might judge me, or they just didn't know, and I think it was the later. So it's a difficult thing. Do you know where you want to go? What skills you want to learn? If I give you a week free time, what is it that you're going to learn in order to become a better professional? Do you know? In our office, we use ambition charting to talk with our customers about where they want to go. And here, this is a post picture, because they were actually doing that and said, can I use the picture for my presentation? So they're taking funny faces. But actually, this is the setting where the consultant makes an ambition chart, and he discusses that with his resource manager. And this is what it looks like. And basically, it's a line with each line is an area of development, which you can define for yourself, where we say, I want to improve myself on instant publications or my agile expertise. And when I'm done, I have, and that's in the right corner, this is what I achieved. And then you make small steps and saying, like, oh, but I won't reach that in a day or in a year or something. So I'm going to make small steps, and this is the first step that I'm going to do. I see some lines which says it's the ambition for this year, and you can discuss that with the HR manager, like, this is where I think I want to go, and these are the things that I want to work on. And from that on, you can sit and take one of those stations and say, like, if I want to work on my agile expertise, and I want to do a COT certification, it says here, what should I do? How can I do it? What do I need to do in order to achieve that? And then it's quite a simple, small problem. So if you want to learn more about it, I've gave some resource workshops on it. You can Google something like Gripping Your Test Maturity, and you'll find some presentation slides on this topic. But that helps you to point the way where you want to go as a professional. Before I continue, I'd like to conduct a small experiment. Can I have 5 volunteers up on stage very quickly? And preferably people that speak English. It's not scary. You don't have to do much. Don't worry. Yeah? I can see one. Please come, because I see I'm running out of time. So if we lose a lot of time in selecting people. So hi, you're Mariano. Yeah, hi. I got 2 people. Yeah, come on. Because I want to do the McLelland ring toss experiment with you. Do you know that one? I think it's from the 50s, from the States. And basically McLelland was looking for researching what people motivates and how people are become achievers or not. And what he asked was to throw a ring on a pin. So you need to do that. So basically, I have a ring toss set, right? I'll put it here. Yeah, I got those 2. Don't worry, Carl. So the mission assignment is get this ring over the pin, one of the 5 pins. Please do that, and not simultaneously one after the other, please. So this is a reenact of the ring toss experiment from McLelland. Please do. Yeah. You never know what happens. Thank you very much. No, you're not ready. You want to get off stage, right? So who do you think was the bravest? Because you threw, right? Yeah. But you failed because you missed it. And they did the cheat, right? Who do you think feels best tonight? Him or the other? You don't know? No. McClelland, basically you're done. The funny thing is I didn't give you instructions where you have to stand or not. And McClelland did a lot of experiments, and there's always somebody who stands from the back, and there's always somebody who cheats and walks up front. And sometimes there are people that are kind of judging where they want to stand. And the funny thing is that McClelland found out that the distance that people choose normally is that distance where the success rate is about 50%. Because if you stand all the way from the back and you throw it, you're never going to hit it. So that won't give you satisfaction because you don't have success. I doubt whether you're really proud of your result, because this gives you results, but it's not a challenge. So somewhere in the middle is an optimum. And that's what McClelland learned, that you have to judge your challenge in order to get satisfaction, but not to make it too difficult for you. Thank you very much for contributing. And that aligns very much with this is difficult, the Siskman Sahali, I think you pronounce it that way. It's the guru on flow, where you say like, if you want to be in flow, flow is the unique situation where you work, put a lot of effort in, but you get more energy out of it. There's a balance between the difficulty of your task and your capabilities. A little bit like finding the distance to your thing. And if it gets too difficult, you get in the stress mode, and the predictability of your success is very low, because you don't really know what happens. And if you're well skilled, too much skilled for the challenge you have, you get into routine or maybe apathy, like I don't want to get out of my bed because I know what will happen, it's boring anyway. So we want to get in the blue zone. And the blue zone is that distance where we think, I might have 50% chance of getting that ring on the pin, but I'm not really sure. And if I practice a lot, I can do a step back. And that's what I think experiments is all about. Also your personal development experiments. If you miss a toss, you move back a little bit, but make small steps. And if you're talking about the ambition chart and making the substations, it's about defining that substation and say, there's a challenge for me, but it's doable. I'm not really sure whether I'll succeed, but if I fail, it doesn't really matter. But I'll learn from that. And I think that's the way that I try to improve myself as a professional. But becoming better is one thing, adding value is something else. Because then you have to become better in the right things, right? So there's a rule of three. I think you have to align with stakeholders' needs. You have to embed it in context, and you have to expose yourself as an authority. And this is a picture that I show very often, where I say, those managers, they have needs. Those managers have worries, maybe fears as well. Think about the manager that's been told to do the agile transition and reshape the IT department, but he doesn't know how to do it. He has fears, he has worries, he has uncertainties. He's far away from that pin, and he needs help to get more success in throwing it. So I think the alignment with stakeholders is all about understanding what he needs, what keeps him awake at night, and then addressing those things, finding activities to help him to create certainty, and report to him about the success or something from it. And this looks very much like testing, where a stakeholder says, I'm afraid the users won't like the system. Oh, why do you think that's the case? Would it help if I do some tests called usability testing? And in the end, I can say, I mark it as the usability is okay, or whatever things are. I'm afraid people will reject the system because they think it's insecure. Oh, maybe I can conduct some experiments called security testing, and then I can tell you whether you have a security issue, but you can do something about it, or I can tell you that's pretty safe. Would you be happy with that? So that's aligning with stakeholders' needs. Because if we start doing that, we have the facts, those are the tests and the test results that we're having, but we add to it the advantage, and then it becomes a benefit. Like you told you were worried about the security, that's why we did something called security testing, and based on the results, that's the fact, these are the results, the advantage is you know what security is like, or whatever example. And I think that helps very much in selling your work and being appreciated, but it's a game changer because you cannot just do what you always do, you have to constantly align with your stakeholders. Another example is of embedding things in the bigger picture is the product review a lot of stakeholders think it's boring and don't really know what it is. So in one organization where we had big reviews, we asked the product owner to stand up and say, like, remember, this is what we want to do as an organization. Do you know? They've been told, and then everybody, yeah, that's why we were doing the big thing. So that's why we worked on this item. And programmer X is going to show the query, which looks a little bit boring. The query is not nice to demo. And then the programmer showed the query and said, like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then the product owner stood up and embedded the story. So that looks like a small thing, but actually it's the first step towards success where we wanted to go. And that way it's embedded and people start to understand better why we do things and they will perceive this value better. And the third thing in the rule of 3 is to share and become an authority of what you are. That's why I'm standing on the stage talking about it. And with Jan-Jaap Kannegieter, we did some workshops and we came up with the profiling curve, which is a little bit a joke, but it works. We say there are some activities that you can do very easily with limited impact, like do a retweet or something on a topic, or make your own tweet. Some things are a little bit more difficult, maybe write a blog about a certain topic, or organize a session as work. And this aligns very much, of course, with the explorer kind of thing. If you explored, you did an experiment, you can teach the organization how they can do things better. Maybe you should organize a session at work or tell it as a SIG, special interest group or something, or talk at a conference. So people see that you are the professional and you have skills and you have knowledge about certain topics that are in demand. And that way you can not only add value, but also make sure that you get a reward for it. So as a wrap-up, I told you that changes are going very fast. Organizations need to adapt more and more and faster. Remember the Peter Gabriel quote. And it's a life-saving strategy, otherwise they fail to survive. But it's hard to predict where the changes are coming. So the natural response is to become adaptive. And I showed some of the things where we want to go, the continuous integration, deployment, the building blocks, and that a lot of organizations are working on those items, and that makes a role shift. I showed you the tester role shift already. So no wonder that we are bewildered. But I came up with a model that you could be a visionary, an expert, or an explorer, either one of them or a mix of them, and that can help you to show your value and to make the transition together with your managers if you know where you want to go. I showed you the ambition chart. Define small steps where you want to go, align those with the business needs, and together become a truly excellent professional that's rewarded for its added value. And I wish you luck, because there's a lot of change, there's a lot of uncertainty, but there's a lot of opportunity for you as well. Thank you very much. I think there's 5 minutes for questions. If there's an English question, I can answer it straight away. Otherwise, I have to find my headset. Is there anybody that wants to comment or ask a question? Or it's the end of the day and we expect drinks or something. Yeah. Well, thank you very much and hope to see you again. Bye-bye.